My name's Mira Dalton. I'm 33. I used to be a public school teacher in a beat-up corner of South Chicago. These days, I run a small community scholarship fund for underprivileged kids. It's nothing flashy. No donors' galas, no gold plaques. But it's real. I live alone. Drive a 2009 Corolla with a dented bumper. I shop at thrift stores. And last week, I got a formal invitation, tucked inside a heavy cream envelope with gold trim, from my Aunt Vivian. She didn't call, didn't write a note. Just forwarded me a generic invite to the grand opening of the Dean Dalton Education Center, a multi-million-dollar project named after my father. A man who, up until his death, was a respected figure in education reform. A man who also, for reasons I still haven't fully unpacked, pushed me out of his life the moment my mom died. But this isn't about him. Not yet. This is about that night. About showing up. Against my better judgment. I wore a simple black dress. The kind I've worn to funerals, job interviews, and PTA meetings. No jewelry. My hair was tied back. I didn't want to draw attention. I just wanted to see the building they'd built in my father's name. I arrived late because I was tutoring a student who'd just lost his mom. When I walked through the front doors, the woman at the registration table barely looked up. "Volunteers are checking in around the side," she said, already turning to the next guest. I hesitated. "I'm here as a guest," I said quietly, pulling out the invitation from my purse. She took it, glanced at it, and frowned. "There's no seat assigned." "I think I was added late," I said. She scribbled something on a sticky note and handed it to me. "Fine, we'll squeeze you into the back." No name badge, no welcome. I stepped inside the ballroom, a chandelier-lit monument to everything I was never allowed to touch. Politicians, university chancellors, private donors, men in tuxedos, women in floor-length gowns, clinking glasses and fake laughing under banners that read, "Shaping Tomorrow's Minds." On stage, there was a massive portrait of my father. He was smiling in that calculated way he always did in press photos. The same man who once told me I was too emotional to pursue academia, that I should stick to something stable like teaching. The same man who gave my college fund to a foundation and told me, apply like everyone else. I scanned the room and saw her, Vivian, standing by the stage, laughing with a group of donors. Her silver dress sparkled under the lights. I hadn't seen her in years. I raised a hand slightly, not to wave, just acknowledge. Her eyes flicked toward me. She saw me. I know she did. And then, like I was a shadow on the wall, she turned her back. I swallowed whatever was rising in my throat and made my way to the last row of chairs, behind the tech crew and coat racks. I didn't cry. I didn't expect anything. But it still hurt. How natural it was for them to ignore me, like I never belonged to the Dalton name. And then, the kicker. A woman sitting 2 rows ahead turned to me during intermission and asked, "Excuse me, do you know when the dessert plates are being served?" I blinked. "I'm not staff," I said. "Oh, sorry," she mumbled. But her eyes lingered on my shoes, my thrifted flats, the way I was sitting alone. Maybe she wasn't the first to think it. She just said it out loud. I got up, stepped outside. I needed air. That's when I heard the mic cut through the ballroom chatter. Vivian's voice, calm and rehearsed. "And now, I'd like to acknowledge a very special, anonymous benefactor, whose contributions made this center possible. Someone who has quietly supported this project in ways few people know." I stopped cold. Then she said it. My name. "Mira Dalton, would you please stand?" Everyone turned. I hadn't told anyone I was the anonymous donor. And in that moment, every face that once looked past me now stared straight through me, waiting to rewrite history. So yeah. There I was, standing in the back of the room in scuffed shoes, half a cup of flat lemonade in my hand, as my name echoed through the ballroom. At first, I thought I misheard. I didn't register it right away, because in what universe would Vivian say my name at a gala she didn't even want me at? But then the spotlight swung toward the back of the room. It hit me full in the face. People turned, heads craned. Vivian smiled like she'd just pulled a rabbit out of a hat. Mira Dalton, ladies and gentlemen, the anonymous donor who helped make tonight possible. I felt everything in me clench at once. I didn't move. I couldn't. Not because I was shy or overwhelmed, but because that wasn't supposed to happen. I had explicitly told the foundation to keep my name confidential. I donated under a small LLC I'd set up years ago, not even using my personal email. Vivian must have dug, or guessed, or worse, known all along. The crowd clapped, unsure. Some politely. Some with that weird hesitation people get when they're not sure if they're clapping for someone important or just being told to. I didn't walk up. I just gave a nod. Awkward. Quick. Like someone trying to exit stage left from a scene they were never meant to be in. Vivian took the mic again. Mira, we're all so proud of the woman you've become. Your generosity honors your father's legacy in the most meaningful way. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab the mic and say, "You mean the legacy you helped erase me from? You mean the man who rewrote his will after my mom died to favor your department's research fund instead of his only daughter's tuition? You mean the years you ghosted every email I sent about reconciling with Dad? Until it was too late?" But I didn't. I sat, in that same back row, and I listened as people who had no idea who I was praised me like I was some quiet hero who didn't want the spotlight. It wasn't humility. It was survival. And still, even as she gave that little fake sweet speech about me, Vivian never once made eye contact. Afterward, during the reception, a wave of people started coming up to shake my hand. Some introduced themselves like we were old colleagues. Others made weird comments like, "You look so much like your father when he was younger. He would have been so proud. You must have gotten your brains from the Dalton side." I smiled, said thank you, nodded like I wasn't dying inside. Then came the moment that nearly broke me. A tall man in a navy blue suit approached. I didn't recognize him at first. Then he spoke. "Mira, wow, it's been 10 years? It was Dr. Brent Halverson, one of my father's protégés, the same man who took over Dad's lab after he passed. The same man who once told me to my face, 'Academia isn't really the right space for someone with your temperament.' I just stared at him. He grinned like none of that had happened. 'I hear you've been doing incredible things with at-risk kids. That's admirable.' Really?" He said it the way someone says, "That's cute," about a finger painting. And then he leaned in. "You know, if you're ever ready to rejoin the academic world, we'd love to help you. Clean up your reputation. This donation, it could really help soften your image." I blinked. I wasn't sure if I was going to cry or throw my drink in his face. "Excuse me?" I asked. He looked puzzled. "I mean, we all know things got a little messy after your mom passed. Your estrangement from Dean was unfortunate. But this could be a reset." That word. Reset. Like my entire life was some PR crisis that needed a rebrand. I didn't answer. I just walked out. Straight through the front doors. The air outside hit me like a slap. But here's the twist. When I got home, I checked my phone. I had 5 missed calls from someone I never expected. Janice Holler. She was my father's longtime assistant. A woman who stayed on even after his passing, helping sort through foundation documents and archiving his research. She'd never reached out to me before. The voicemail said, "Mira, something's not right. There's a letter from your dad. It was never sent. And you need to see it. Now." I barely slept that night. Janice's message played in my head on repeat. "There's a letter from your dad. It was never sent." She didn't say what it was about, or why she suddenly felt the need to reach out now, years after the funeral, after all the estate stuff had been handled. The next morning, I skipped work and drove straight to her condo. She lived in one of those high-rise buildings where the lobby smells like lemon polish and generational wealth. Janice opened the door like she'd been pacing all night. Her hair, once perfectly curled and pinned, was undone. She looked older than I remembered. Not in a weak way. More like someone who'd seen too much and kept it all inside. "I didn't know how to tell you this," she said, holding a manila envelope in her hands like it weighed 100 pounds. "I found this in the back of your father's personal filing cabinet. It was sealed, stamped, addressed to you." She paused. But it was buried under a stack of discard documents, stuff that was supposed to be shredded. I took the envelope. My name and old college address were typed on the front. No return address. Postmarked 2 weeks before my father died. Inside, 2 pages, neatly written, signed at the bottom in his handwriting. I started reading. At first, it was stiff, formal, like he was writing to a stranger. But then it changed. He wrote about how he missed my mother, how hard it had been raising me after she passed, how overwhelmed he felt trying to balance grief, work, and parenting. Then came the part that gutted me. "I know I've failed you, Mira. I let others speak for me. I believed things I shouldn't have. I let my own guilt blind me to your pain. I'm sorry I wasn't braver." I stopped. My chest felt like it was caving in. Then came the last paragraph. "I've started the process of revising the will. Vivian isn't happy, but this time I won't let anyone erase you. I want you to have the lake house. Your mother loved it there. I want you to decide what happens to it. Not the foundation, not the board. You." I reread that line 3 times. The lake house. The only place I ever felt safe as a kid. The one thing I begged to keep, and they told me he'd left it to the university for retreats and research. But that wasn't the truth. The truth was, he didn't finish revising the will. He died before he could. And someone, Vivian, found that letter and buried it. "Why now?" I asked Janice, tears slipping down without permission. "Why are you telling me this now?" She looked away. "Because I was scared of her too," she whispered. "But when I saw what she did to you at the gala, I realized I've been protecting the wrong legacy." I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. All I could do was sit on her velvet couch, clutching a letter from a father I thought had abandoned me, realizing he'd tried to come back. And someone made sure I never saw it. The worst part? She succeeded. Vivian got what she wanted. For years, I walked around believing I was unloved, unworthy, like I'd been erased on purpose, when really I was erased by someone else's hand. And the world believed it, because she told it first. I've lived so long with that ache in my chest, I forgot it wasn't supposed to be there. I forgot what it was like to feel wanted. If you've ever been cut off by family, told your version of the story didn't matter, or had someone rewrite your place in the world without your consent, I see you. I didn't think anyone else could possibly understand the grief that comes after the grief. But now, I think some of you might. And honestly, I hope you'll stay. Because the next part of this story? It's not about loss. It's about what happens when you finally stop letting other people decide who you get to be. I didn't go to work the next day. I sat at my kitchen table with Janice's letter on one side and a legal pad on the other. And for the first time in years, I wasn't grieving. I was angry. Not the kind of anger that explodes. The kind that simmers, quiet, focused. I went through every document I had. Emails, foundation statements, meeting notes Janice had forwarded over the years. I printed screenshots, bank records, even saved voicemail transcriptions. By noon, I had a pile labeled, "What They Took." Because this wasn't just about the lake house. It wasn't even about the money. It was about how they erased me with boardroom signatures and legalese and half-truths told just loud enough to sound like fact. And now I knew the truth. My father had been trying to change the will. Vivian had intercepted the letter. And not only had she kept it from me, she'd convinced everyone that I didn't deserve to be included. But what she didn't know? I still had a seat on the advisory board of the Dalton Education Fund, A dead seat. Symbolic. Never used. Just there because my father hadn't gotten around to removing it. No one ever notified me of meetings. No one invited me to vote. I wasn't even on the email chain anymore. But legally, I was still a board member. So I requested the board minutes from the last 5 years. I worded it like a concerned donor. Nothing dramatic. Just, as a current board member and named contributor, I'd like access to minutes and filings regarding the Dalton property allocations and educational planning decisions since 2019. I CC'd the legal representative for the foundation. 3 hours later, I got a call. From Vivian. She didn't even bother with hello. What exactly do you think you're doing? I kept my voice calm, measured. Exercising my rights. This isn't the time to dredge up old family drama, Mira. That's funny, I said, because you've been dining out on that drama for years. The board won't entertain this. You have no support. We'll see. I hung up, and then I called the university's public relations department, the one that had built an entire donation campaign around the Dalton name. I asked a very specific question. Does your team have access to documentation confirming that the donor listed as M. Dalton was Dean Dalton or Mira Dalton? They stuttered, transferred me, eventually said they'd get back to me. And here's where it gets fun. I'd kept copies of every donation confirmation from my LLC. I sent a formal notice. If they continued using my name and image under the assumption it referred to Dean Dalton without acknowledging my involvement, I'd be pursuing a legal remedy for misrepresentation and donor fraud. Less than 24 hours later, the university called back, with apologies, and a request for a private meeting. Vivian must have heard about it, because that same night she emailed me, Mira, let's be reasonable. This isn't how your father would want things handled. So I replied with 2 words. Neither is fraud. I didn't stop there. I compiled everything into a single drive. Sent it to 3 board members I knew from years ago. People who used to send me birthday cards before they were told to keep things professional. 2 responded immediately. They hadn't seen the letter. They hadn't been told about my father's intent to amend the will. They didn't even know I'd been removed from communications. They wanted answers. Vivian called me again the next morning. I let it ring. By the end of the week, I'd been added back to the board mailing list. And then came the twist I never saw coming. One of the board members I'd reached out to, Gregory Taylor, an older man who'd been close to my mom, asked to meet in person. We met at a diner off I-94. He came alone, sat down and slid a thick envelope across the table. Your father didn't just write 1 letter, he said quietly. There were 2. My hands shook as I opened it. This one wasn't addressed to me. It was addressed to Vivian. And inside was a single paragraph, dated just 5 days before his death. If anything happens to me before I finalize the changes, you are to give Mira the letter. And the lake house. You know this. If you ignore it, it will be the final betrayal you can't come back from. Vivian had seen both letters. She made a choice. And now, I had proof. I know I'm not the only one who's ever been cut out of their own story. If you've ever been silenced by people who claimed it was for your own good, I hear you. And I hope you'll stay. Because next, I'm taking this public. The foundation board meeting was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon, 2 p.m. sharp, on the top floor of the campus administrative building. I walked in 5 minutes early. Dressed in black slacks, a navy blazer, and the same thrifted shoes everyone thought made me invisible at the gala. I wore them on purpose. Let them remember. Vivian was already seated, flanked by 2 longtime board allies and a lawyer she didn't bother to introduce. Her smile was tight, controlled, but her eyes darted. Nervous, calculating. She didn't know what I'd brought, but I did. When the chair opened the floor, I waited for Vivian to launch into her usual narrative. How the foundation had thrived under her direction, how emotional distractions shouldn't cloud organizational objectives. But before she could say a word, I slid 3 printed documents across the table. The first, the notarized copy of my father's letter to me, The second, the letter to Vivian, the one she chose to ignore. And the third, a legal statement from the university's general counsel, acknowledging their misrepresentation of donor identity in public materials, now corrected, thanks to my pressure. Dead silence. Then I spoke. I never wanted to be here out of anger, I said, voice steady. But every time you silenced me, every time you told people I wasn't part of the legacy, you made this necessary. Vivian's lawyer tried to interject. I cut him off. You had a legal obligation, I said directly to her. My father entrusted you with his wishes. You buried them. The board sat frozen. I wasn't loud. I wasn't theatrical. I was prepared. By the time I finished walking them through the timeline, my donation, the erasure, the forged narrative, one board member physically pushed her chair back and said, Jesus Christ. Within a week, a vote was called. Vivian was formally removed from the foundation's leadership. Her resignation was announced publicly as a personal decision. But everyone in that circle knew the truth. She lost the position. She lost the lake house, returned to me under a quiet but binding settlement. And most importantly, she lost control of the story. But that's not the part that meant the most. What meant the most was what came next. 6 months later, I reopened the lake house, not for personal use, but as a retreat space for students in the scholarship program I run. Kids whose families told them they were too much, too poor, or not our kind of smart. We named it the Mira Project. No last names. No legacies attached. Just kids, silence, water, and freedom. One of the students, Nina, 14, all elbows and oversized hoodies, stood on the dock one night and whispered, I didn't know places like this existed for people like me. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't reclaiming a house. I was rebuilding a world I was told I didn't deserve to belong to. My father didn't die believing I was a mistake. He died trying to correct one. And the woman who stole that truth from me? Now she lives in the shadow of the story she tried to write me out of. I don't need revenge. I have something better. I have receipts. I have peace. And I have my name. What I learned. Closure doesn't always look like a hug or an apology. Sometimes it's a locked door, your own key, and the choice to never ask for permission again. If any part of this hit home, if you've ever been cut off, overwritten, or made to feel like a guest in your own life, drop a comment. I'd like to hear your story. And if you're still somewhere in the middle of it, trying to find your way out, stay. You're not alone. We're still writing the ending. Together.